friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. I am excited today because I'm doing something that I have been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm going to bring you along with me, and that is to test out 5 different meals in jars that feature chicken. Now, what I mean by testing out is that I'm only going to be doing 1 quart jar per recipe and putting all of those in my canner at once, which brings me to a common question of, can we mix and match canning recipes in 1 canner load? And the answer is yes, as long as the recipes all need to can for the same amount of time. Now, I mentioned that these are all going to be chicken-based meals in jars, and so they're all going to be using chicken, and for that reason, they all need to pressure can in quarts for 90 minutes at a time, regardless of what other ingredients are in the jar. So in this particular video with these particular 5 recipes, it is totally fine to mix and match these recipes. Now, what I mean by meals in jars, it's pretty self-explanatory, but pretty much I just mean heat and eat meals that already have meat and vegetables and seasonings and all of that already in the jar that you can just dump out to a pot, heat up, and go. Now, most of these meals are going to be something that we would serve on top of something like rice, pasta, or potatoes. Some of these meals will just be simply heat and eat with nothing added to it. Others we will want to thicken later on with something like flour, or we'll want to drain off and mix with cream cheese or something like that. But most of them we're going to be opening the jar, heating it up, and then serving it over rice, pasta, or mashed potatoes. That's what these meals in jars are kind of all have in common. Okay, let's get started.
By the way, if you would like help building your food storage, scroll down to the description box of this video and click this link for our free 1-year food storage plan. We calculated a year's supply of food for one person, then broke that data down into a week-by-week list of items to build your pantry on a budget. We'll send it straight to your inbox. If you're new here, we invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss all of our upcoming food preservation, pantry storage, and gardening tutorials. Now back to the kitchen.
Look at all of these beautiful ingredients that we get to play with today. I wanted to very quickly address the chicken before we move into the rest of the recipes. So when you are canning, you can can with already cooked chicken, or you can can with raw chicken. Now, when I started and when I cooked this, you'll notice that it has a bit of, I hope you can see that it has a bit of pink in it. It's not cooked all the way. So when you are cooking chicken for canning shredded chicken, you only want to cook the meat about 80% of the way through before moving forward with the canning process. So that's what I did yesterday. I cooked this meat about 80% through and then put it in the fridge. And I was planning on just doing canned chicken. We had a massive sale on chicken in my area recently, so I stocked up on it and I've just been canning chicken left and right. But then I remember this is the perfect opportunity to go ahead and do all of those meals in jars that I've been wanting to test out. So I am going to be using pre-cooked chicken, or at least cooked chicken that's cooked 80% of the way, but I did just want to note that you can absolutely can all of these recipes that I'm going to be showing you today with raw chicken. It is totally fine to put raw chicken in a canning jar mixed with all sorts of vegetables, because the cooking process will take place during the canning process and you don't have to worry about the chicken contaminating all of your vegetables. It's all going to cook in the same jar. It's all going to be cooked at the extremely high temperatures that we get under pressure in a pressure canner. So that's not a concern at all. So once I test out these 5 recipes, if let's say I really love 3 of them, I am going to be coming back later this fall and winter, Lord willing, and canning up large batches of each one of these individually. And when I do that, I'm not going to bother cooking the chicken first because it's just an extra step. I will simply use raw chicken. So I did want to make that note. Normally, when you're using raw chicken, you do want to dice it up into like 1 to 2 inch cubes. If you're doing bone-in chicken, then you don't have to do that. But just for boneless chicken and for these meals in jars purposes, you would want to cut up your chicken into 1 to 2 inch cubes. Another thing that I wanted to note about what I'm going to be doing today is the jars. When you are canning meals in jars, and really when you're canning anything with meat in it, you want to use the wide mouth jars. That's just because it's so much easier to pour out of than these regular mouth jars. So why do I have regular mouth jars up here? And that is because I want to get 5 recipes in one go in my pressure canner. And I can only do that if the majority of the jars are regular mouth. So yes, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to scoop the meals out of these jars later on, but it's not a big deal. I'm just going to have a skinny spatula on hand. No biggie. So I did want to note that preferred jar size for meals in jars and for meat is wide mouth. Okay, let's get loading up these jars. Okay, our first recipe is going to be a chicken and gravy. Another thing I wanted to mention real quick is the fact that all of these recipes are going to be raw packed, and what that means is we're not cooking all of these things first and then pouring hot food into hot jars. We are raw packing, which means pretty much everything is going to be room temperature, which means we need room temperature jars and a room temperature canner. You can see I don't even have my canner on. One of the benefits of raw packing is you don't have to preheat your canner, and you don't have to worry about all the temperatures of the food in the canner and the jars all being the same temperature. Everything is just room temperature, and so it's kind of nice to be able to work a little bit slower and load the jars one at a time and not have to worry too much about keeping the temperatures, you know, kind of warm and hot at the same temperature. So just wanted to mention that. For the chicken and gravy, we're going to start out with 2 cups of chicken. Got my chicken just off camera here. You do want to use a funnel when you're loading in this stuff, especially this greasy chicken. Let's get 2 cups of that. I'm going to do one more little piece because that was not completely full. Okay, and before I put in anything else, I am going to kind of pack down the chicken a little bit before we add in our other ingredients. And that's pretty much how I'm going to be doing all of these jars. Chicken first, pack it down, other ingredients. Get down there. Okay, moving on. We need 1/2 cup of chopped celery. Already got that here. Forgot I needed potatoes. Needed to dice those real quick, but we need 1/2 cup of diced and peeled potatoes. Doesn't matter what type of potato. Next, we need 1 teaspoon of salt. Whenever you are using salt in a recipe, in a canning recipe, you don't want it to have any additives in it, and you want it to be non-iodized. This is, let's see, what is this? This is the Redmond's real salt. I just reused this old container from the store, but it's not Himalayan salt. It's actually the Redmond's real salt. Okay, so a teaspoon of that, and a teaspoon of chicken broth powder. Same, you can use chicken bouillon if you would like. Orrington Farms chicken broth powder is what we use for all of our, anything where it would normally call for bouillon, because it has cleaner ingredients in it. So 1 teaspoon of chicken broth powder. I'm going to do a heaping teaspoon of that. 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. I'm going to do a very light on that. I don't want this meal to be too spicy. And this recipe is from Ball, and it calls for 2 tablespoons of white wine. I am not going to put any of that in here because that's just not something that I have. I do have white wine vinegar, and I was doing some reading on if I could swap those out, and we can swap those out. It's not a safety thing, but I do think the vinegar would add kind of a maybe strange taste to this, and it only calls for 2 tablespoons. I'm just not going to use that at all. So, but just know that if you would like to use this recipe, it does call for 2 tablespoons of white wine. Okay, so at this point, we just fill the jar with water or broth. Now, when I was making all of that chicken from that sale that I was telling you all about, I used all the bones and my onion scraps in the freezer and made a whole bunch of broth. So for all of these recipes, I'm going to be topping them all with some fresh homemade chicken broth, but you can absolutely use water, but you're going to get a lot more flavor if you use chicken broth. Let's say you don't have any fresh broth on hand, you could add another teaspoon of your chicken broth powder and then fill it up with water, and that will give you a lot more flavor than just topping it off with water. So all of these recipes need to be filled to 1-inch headspace. So when we get to the point of topping it off with whatever we need, the water or the broth, we're going to be filling it up to 1-inch headspace. Okay. And then we're going to debubble and see if we need to adjust our headspace at all, which I don't think we're going to need to, but Kind of give it a good stir. I want all those ingredients kind of mixed together. Looking good. Let me get a wet paper towel. Gonna wipe our rims with a clean wet towel, just to make sure none of that grease from the chicken got on there. That might prevent a good seal. I have my jars sitting in some warm water just off camera here. Not my jars, I'm sorry, my lids. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And then we're gonna put our rings onto fingertip tight, which is just point of resistance and quarter turn more, and load that into our canner. Okay, and on to the next recipe we go. Next recipe, oh, I did want to mention that chicken and gravy. I'm not going to be showing on camera making, like cooking and eating all of these meals. So I did want to mention that this chicken broth, or excuse me, this chicken gravy is of course, you know, thick. And we can't put any dairy or flour in our canning recipes if we're going to be following safety guidelines. And so when I go to dump that jar into my pot to cook it, I will simply cook up a quick roux, just equal parts butter, butter, flour, milk, and make up a quick roux and then add that to that dish to make it nice and thick for a nice chicken gravy, and we'll serve that most likely over mashed potatoes. Okay, so next recipe is a chicken chili verde. Yum. So again, we're going to start out with 2 cups of chicken. Just about all these recipes are going to be about 2 cups of chicken, except for the last one, but we'll get to that later. Hope I have enough. I didn't measure out the chicken first because I wasn't originally planning on doing all of this, but I'm glad I thought about it. Been wanting to do this for a long time. Okay, so load the chicken, squish it down, and then the next ingredient is 1/2 cup of chopped onions. I've got all my chopped onions right here, so we need 1/2 cup. Next, we need 2 tablespoons of cilantro. We do not have any cilantro on hand, so I'm going to be using my parsley. We need 2 tablespoons. I don't have my tablespoon out. We need 2 tablespoons of that, either cilantro or parsley. Anytime a recipe calls for cilantro and I don't have it, I just use parsley. It's a great substitute. 2 tablespoons of that. A lot of it's sticking to the side of the jar. Don't want to lose all that parsley. There we go. Okay, 1 clove of garlic. Now we put all of our garlic up this year already minced and freeze dried it. So I have just rehydrated this garlic, and whenever a recipe calls for 1 clove of garlic, I just use 1 teaspoon of already minced up garlic. So I'm just going to get a teaspoon of minced up garlic. It smells so good. Okay, 2 tablespoons of pickled peppers. I have a mixture of pickled peppers here and a mixture of fresh cut peppers here. You do not have to use pickled peppers, just use what you have on hand. It can be any kind of peppers you like. If you like it spicy, you could even use jalapeno peppers. We don't like it super spicy, so we're just using a mixture of these bell peppers, some pickled, some aren't. But I'm just going to be doing 2 tablespoons of this pepper mixture. I thought the pickled peppers would make a good addition for the chicken chili verde because it does have more of a tang to it because of that vinegar. So that's why I chose to use some pickled peppers instead of just plain fresh peppers in this recipe. Okay, next we need 1/2 cup of already cooked up white beans. Now you can certainly use whatever beans that you want, but because this is a white chicken chili, you typically use white beans in that, but it's not a safety thing. You can use any kind of beans that you would like. Let me kind of tamp this down just a little bit. Okay, next we need 1/2 cup of salsa verde. You can also do 1/2 cup of green chilies. Now this is a salsa verde that is actually made out of green tomatoes. We made this up last year when we had a lot of green tomatoes that just wouldn't ripen. I decided to make up this verde, and it has really come in handy to not have to buy little green chilies or verde at the store for recipes like this. So I need 1/2 cup of salsa verde. Next, we need 1 teaspoon of salt. Dry this off real quick. And that's it. We're going to fill our jar up with either the broth or the water. And we're using broth today. To 1-inch headspace. Now this is going to settle. I don't know if you can see all this bubbling action over here. The liquid is going to get settled down into all of those ingredients. So I'm going to bubble or debubble for a minute. And then continue filling the jar to 1-inch headspace. We are almost there. When I'm working with really greasy foods, which is typically going to be your meats, and also homemade chicken broth tends to be a little bit more fatty, I actually give myself a little bit more than 1-inch headspace, almost like 1 1/4 or maybe even 1 1/2 inch headspace. That is strictly just my experience with greasy foods leading to like siphoning a little bit more than other type of recipes. And once that grease gets on that lid, it will not seal. So I give myself a little bit of extra headspace there whenever I'm working with meats and broths like this. Okay, let's put on our new clean lid. Whoops, sorry, I hit the camera. And then our ring to fingertip tight and into the canner. Okay, cleaned up some things, dried off some of my measuring cups. So next recipe is chicken and corn chowder base. This is probably the recipe that I am most excited about. So we are going to start out with 1 cup of corn. This was actually a cup of freeze-dried corn that I rehydrated completely. You can absolutely use dehydrated or freeze-dried foods in your canning. The only caveat is that it absolutely has to be fully rehydrated first. So that's 1 cup of corn. We need a 1/4 cup of our chopped onions. Next, we need a 1/4 cup of peeled and diced potatoes. Next, we need a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic, minced garlic. I'm always a little bit generous on my garlic. I don't worry about it getting exactly 1/4 teaspoon. Okay, next is paprika, and the rest of these ingredients call, well, not rest, but a lot of these ingredients call for 1/8 teaspoon. Y'all, I don't think I've ever used 1/8 of a teaspoon, but I found one in my cabinet that I didn't even know I had. I would usually just use that 1/4 teaspoon and do about halfway, but since I was doing this, I figured I'd look for it, and I found one. So 1/8 teaspoon of paprika, an 1/8 teaspoon of thyme. I'm going to be using some ground thyme, which is going to be a little bit more potent than whole thyme. So I'm going to actually use a little bit less than 1/8 of a teaspoon. I love the smell of thyme. We got some growing out in the garden. I'm excited about it. Okay, so an 1/8 cup, oh no, excuse me, woo, not 1/8 cup, 1/8 teaspoon of pepper. That would be disastrous if I put 1/8 of a cup in there. An 1/8 teaspoon of onion powder. My onion powder here. Do kind of a heaping teaspoon of that. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You can dry that off. I use that for the garlic. Okay, a 1/4 teaspoon salt. And then, oops, I forgot to put my chicken in first, didn't I? Oh well. So in this particular case, that's not a big deal. I just like to put the chicken at the base, but it's not a safety thing. You can put the chicken in anytime you like, really. So this recipe calls for 1/2 cup of chicken. I'm going to do just a slightly bit more than that. And I'm going to kind of tamp it down just a little bit. Now, since this is a chowder, this is going to be very heavy liquid because chowder, of course, is a soup. So this jar isn't going to be near as full of ingredients or solids as all the others. Okay, is that it? Let me make sure I got my recipe right. Salt, cup chicken. Yep. Okay, so the rest is filled with broth. Now we like our chowders really thick. So when I go to heat this up, I'm going to do the same thing with that chicken gravy, and I'm going to use, what's going on here? Let me mix it up a little bit. I'm going to use a roux. I'm going to make a roux, and then dump this corn chicken chowder, in with it to make it nice and thick. I'm going to give this a good stir. Okay. Wipe our rim. Clean, warm lid. Soaking in warm water and even a low, very, very low simmer just helps kind of loosen up the rubber so it can kind of get a better seal easier. But just note, if you are using ball or Kerr lids, they no longer recommend heating them up first. Just a note. That has changed in recent years. A lot of people don't realize that. Okay, recipe number 4 is chicken a la king. So for this recipe, when I go to serve it, I will be draining off the liquid, heating it up, and then mixing with cream cheese, and it's going to be served more than likely over pasta. So chicken a la king. Let's go ahead and start with our chicken, which I believe is 1 cup. I might do a little bit more than that. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, since this is a chicken a la king, which is a very heavily main chicken dish, I'm going to go ahead and do 2 cups. If you are brand new to canning, I highly recommend sticking exactly to the recipe as it is stated. But if you have some experience under your belt, you know where you can kind of change the ingredients a little bit, change the amounts of the ingredients a little bit. Since this is pressure canning for 90 minutes in the canner, we don't have to be concerned at all about the acidity level of this jar, which is why I am comfortable with putting this already cooked chicken in there. And since the chicken is already cooked, I know that I'm not going to have to be worried about a density issue. So I am comfortable putting 2 cups of chicken in this jar. Just wanted to mention that because I know some people might wonder. So a 1/4 cup of onion is next, chopped up. 1/4 cup chopped onion. Whoops. 1/4 cup of chopped mushrooms. Next is a 1/4 cup of our diced peppers. Again, I got a mixture of some fresh and some pickled. What did I say? Did I say 1/4 cup? Yes, what am I doing? Why do I have a tablespoon? Okay, 1/4 cup. I'm going to do a heaping 1/4 cup because we love peppers around here. And next is 1 teaspoon of our minced garlic. Next, we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of our parsley. Next is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Next is 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper. And I believe that's it other than our chicken broth. Let me double check my recipe and make sure. Yep, we're good to go. And I think I'm going to have to get another container of chicken broth out. Let's see. Looks like I'm coming to the end of my jar here. Yep. Let me grab some more chicken broth real quick. Actually, you know what? This is such a small amount. I'm just going to top it off with water. That is totally safe to do when you're canning. There we go. Just top it off with water real quick. I'm going to debubble, mix around the ingredients really good. And again, like I said, when I go to cook this, it's chicken a la king. Really delicious served over pasta. I'm going to drain off the liquid. Maybe not all the liquid, maybe about half of the liquid. Heat it up in my pot and then add a block of cream cheese. And that's going to create our chicken a la king sauce that's going to be served over our pasta. I cannot wait to try this. I've been wanting to try this for so long. Oh, I'm excited. Okay, clean our rims. New clean lid. Ring fingertip tight. Okay, last but not least is simply a taco seasoned chicken. So this is going to be chicken that I'm just going to be using in our tacos. And for this reason, I am not worried about how much chicken I'm going to be using. It is completely safe to can chicken in quart jars, which means we can fill up chicken all the way to 1-inch headspace and can it as is. So I'm not concerned about only having half a cup or 1 cup or 2 cups. I'm not concerned about that at all as far as safety goes for canning. So I am just going to, I do want to, you know what? I want to have peppers and onions in here because that's typically what we serve with our tacos whenever we're doing some kind of taco mixture. So what I'm going to do the peppers and onions first and then just top it off with the chicken. So I'm going to do a 1/4 cup of chopped onions. Let's see how many peppers we have left. We don't have a whole lot of peppers left. That's probably about half a cup to a cup. I'm going to do all of those. And then the rest, we're just going to fill up our chicken jar, and then we're going to season it with some taco seasoning. We use our homemade taco seasoning, so it's not too spicy. We can control the spice level. We do have a video on our homemade taco seasoning, so you can check that out on the channel. As I go, I'm going to tamp it down and fit as much chicken into this jar as possible. That's probably all I'm going to get in there. Plus, I'm running out of chicken. Okay, I'm going to take off that little bit. Let's see if I can get this down in there. Yep. Okay, so now we are going to do a tablespoon of our homemade taco seasoning. And you can actually season this however you want. You can also season it as heavily as you want. So if you like your taco meat extremely well seasoned, you could absolutely do 2 tablespoons. I believe 2 tablespoons is what the general packet is at the store. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm going to see what 1 tablespoon looks like. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be enough. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of this taco seasoning. And then just like we do with all of the other recipes, we're going to top it off with broth, and I do need to grab some more. Okay. So broth or water to 1-inch headspace. Gonna have to let that debubble. Push this down, make sure that the broth is evenly distributed throughout the jar. In case you're wondering why we keep adding liquid to all of these jars, that's because of heat penetration. We want the canning heat, the temperatures inside that canner to reach all the way to the center of the jar, and liquid is an excellent conductor of heat. Okay. I think I might have a little bit too much in there. Let's see. So that is right at 1-inch headspace, but like I mentioned before, I discussed why I like to give myself a little bit more wiggle room than that with greasy foods like this. So I'm going to take out just a little bit of water. Okay. Let's wipe our rims, which got really dirty, so I need to wipe these really good. Okay, we are ready to get our canner going. Let me get some things tidied up so you can get a closer look and a better look. Okay, I'm going to be using my electric pressure canner here, so I'm going to click the pressure can setting, and these quart jars need to pressure can for 90 minutes. And then it says insert jars. We have already insert our jars. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the lid. And then click the next button. Now at this point, it's going to start warming up. I have spoken to Presto, who is the maker of this canner, and they have told me that when raw packing, if we want to skip the warm jar feature, because this warming feature is warming up your jars to put hot food in. So really you could skip this step, and what you can do is hold down the next button for about 3 seconds and it will skip this step. But let me tell you why I'm not going to do that. When I heard that that was possible to do, I started doing it. I started skipping the warm jar feature set when I was using raw packed recipes, and what I found was I was having a lot of seal failures and I didn't understand why, and so I just tried it one time. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna not skip the warming feature and just let it, it's not a safety thing, it's totally fine for these jars of food to slowly, you know, warm up, even though it's not the canning process hasn't started yet. And so I did that, and I stopped having issues with seal failures. So just a tip, if anyone has this particular canner, even though I am raw packing and even though you can skip the warm jar feature, I recommend not skipping it. So we do have a video on how to use this canner step by step, so I'm not going to go through all of that, but I will link the video below where we do go through step by step, and that is the canning shredded chicken video. If you want to learn how to use this particular canner. But I will bring you back when these are ready to come out of the canner. Okay, our pressure canner is ready. I've been letting it sit for about 10 minutes. Let's get these out, see how they look. See if I can remember which one's which. Okay, this one is the taco meat, I believe. This one is the chicken corn chowder soup base. The separation between the liquid and vegetables is totally fine. Let's see, I think this is the chicken a la king. This one, oh, that's the white chicken chili verde. Yes, and so this one must be the chicken gravy in a jar. Let's take a closer look. Notice how they are, the bubbles are still rushing to the top. We've had some comments lately from people wondering if that's okay, and that is good. That is excellent. That means you have a very good seal. The temperatures reach those super high temperatures needed to kill off any bacteria, and it's totally fine and actually good for their jars to still be bubbling. So this one, chicken chili verde, chicken a la king, chicken corn chowder base. Oh, chicken gravy? No, that one's the chicken gravy. What is this one, y'all? Oh, taco. Our taco meat. Yes, our chicken taco meat, because I see peppers and onions down there with mostly chicken. And then this one is the chicken gravy in a jar, I think. Man, they look good. Okay, y'all, I hope this video has been helpful to you. If y'all like this kind of video, let me know in the comments. And maybe we could do like a whole series, you know, with meals in jars based on maybe beef and pork or venison or soups or stuff like that. So y'all let us know in the comments below. We'll see you next time. Bye.